So today we're going to be talking about a fast plant lab. You might be wondering, what the heck is a fast plant? They were actually plants that were engineered at the University of Wisconsin-Madison to grow really fast. And the reason that scientists might want to use these fast plants is because they grow really quickly. So they can be used to do a lot of different experiments, and you don't have to wait as long for those seedlings to grow. And so today we're going to be looking at some of the traits of these fast plants, and they're determined by some genes. And so we're going to do some genetics work looking at these fast plants. So the first thing we're going to look at is a table. You'll notice this is stem color. If we look back to our previous slide, you'll notice some of these stems are purplish in color, some are green in color. And so what we did is we looked at these plants, we counted up all the green stems, and we counted up all of the purple stems. And we put them in a table. So here's our table. We have some generations here. I'll show you a pedigree in a second. But these are in the first generation. We found 120 purple stems that came from one type of seed, 115 green stems that came from another. Then when we bred those two plants together, generation 2 made all purple stems, and then generation 3 had a mix. So if we take a look, we can calculate the percent. So we know we're looking at the percentage of green stems. Here we have 0. So in our table we would write 0%. Here we have all green stems. There are no purple stems, so this would be 100. Here we have all purple stems and 0 green, so that would be 0. And then what I need you to do is calculate what percentage of green stems are down here. So remember, to calculate a percentage, we have to take the number of green divided by the total times 100. So 38 divided by 164 times 100. Awesome. So you should have gotten around 23%. So 23% were green in this last generation. Take a look at these 3 pedigrees. The color of the shapes indicates the color. So for example, I1, I2. I1, we had our all purple. I2 were all green. Generation 2, all purple stems. And then generation 3, I didn't color in. What I need you to do is tell me which of these pedigrees best represents the data in our table. You should have picked this middle pedigree. So this middle one best represents the data because I1 and I2 are purple and green. And then all of generation 2 is purple. So all of these are purple. Now, if 2 different colored plants are bred together, or organisms with 2 different traits, their offspring will show the dominant trait. So in generation 1, we have 2 different colors bred together. So based on this, which color of stem is dominant? You should have told me purple. Purple's dominant because when we breed purple with green, we get all purple. Okay, and so this is one of the ways that we can figure out what trait is dominant. So purple stems are dominant over green stems. That's what we think, and we're going to test this out. So to confirm, we're going to give the genotype of each of the following plants, and we need to assume that both of these are purebred. Now remember, purple is dominant, that's what we think is dominant, and green is recessive. So tell me, what would be the genotypes for each of these individuals, assuming they're purebred? You should have told me that purple is big A, and green is little a. They're both purebred, okay? We are going to test this idea then. And what we're going to do is we are going to do a Punnett square. If we take a look back at our pedigree here, both of these individuals were breeded and produced all purple stemmed offspring. So we're going to take these 2 individuals, put them in a Punnett square, and see, do we get all purple offspring? So our Punnett square is on the left here. Tell me, inside this Punnett square, what are we going to end up with? Yeah, we're going to end up with all big A, little a inside the Punnett square, which corresponds with purple. So, does this match with what our pedigree says? It does, because big A, little a are all the offspring, and we see in generation 2, all the offspring are purple. So this checks out. We have correctly identified the dominant stem-colored gene. If we take a look at our pedigree, this makes sense. We have our big A, our little a, they breed together, and they form a big A, little a purple stem plants. To further test this, we're going to breed 2 of these individuals and see what we get for their offspring here, and see if this matches the results in our table. So we're going to do a Punnett square now with big A, little a. Okay, so big A, little a, you tell me what we're going to get for our results in this Punnett square. So we should end up with 3 out of 4 are going to have a big A, which means they'll be purple. So 75% purple and 25% green. So then, if we take a look, does our prediction of 75% purple and 25% green match with what is in our table for generation 3? You tell me. You should have gotten that, yeah, it does match. 23% is really close to 25%. It's not exactly the same. So we would assume that the other 70, in this case 77%, were purple, and that pretty much matches. So we figured out stem color. We said that purple stems are dominant, okay, green stems are recessive. Now we're going to look at leaf color, and we're going to do the same process to figure out which leaf color is dominant, which leaf color is recessive. So we have a table here, right? Generation 1, generation 2, or sorry, generation 1, the second parent, generation 2, generation 3. You'll notice we have green leaves here, yellow leaves here. I calculated the total leaves for you. And then we've got our observed yellow leaves. So now we're looking at which ones are yellow. So we've got 100% here, 0%, 0% for generation 2, and what I need you to do is calculate what are the observed percentage of yellow leaves for generation 3. Remember, we're going to take the number of yellow leaves divided by the total times 100. You should have gotten 33%, right? 55 divided by 164 times 100 is 33%. So I need you to take a look at the pedigrees below and tell me which one best represents the data in our table. You should have chosen the first pedigree here. So I1 is all green, or all yellow. I2 is all green. Generation 2 is all green. Okay, now you'll notice again, I didn't color in generation 3. We're going to do that a little bit later. So again, if 2 different colored plants are bred together, their offspring are going to show the dominant trait. So based on this, which color leaf is dominant? You should have said green, because when we breed green and yellow together, we get green offspring. So it's important to note, sometimes people think that the more common it is, that's the dominant one. It's not necessarily true, okay? So we use 2 different colors, breed them together, and then see what we get. So to test our hypothesis that green is the dominant color, we're going to go ahead and do a Punnett square between this yellow individual and the green individual. And again, we're going to assume that they are purebred. Okay, so yellow will use little b, green will use big B. You tell me, what are we going to get in this Punnett square? So in the Punnett square, we're going to get big B, little b, and we would expect that all the offspring would be green. So go ahead and tell me then, do the results of this Punnett square match what we said for generation 2 down here, that they would all be green? It does. So all of our offspring here are green, all of the offspring in generation 2 are green. And so what we can do is we can go ahead, we can write in that, this yellow square will be little b, green will be big B, and then their offspring will be big B, little b. Again, we're gonna test, can we breed these two individuals together and get the same results that we got for our table for generation 3? So you tell me what we're gonna get for this Punnett square. So for this Punnett square, we've got 75% have a big B, which means 75% are going to be green, 25% are going to be yellow. So this 75% green, 25% yellow, does this match with our results from the table? Now, it's a little bit different from this table, right? The table's 33%. I would say that's still pretty close to matching. All right, it's not exactly 25-75, but it's pretty close. So we can safely assume that green is the dominant color for leaves. So the whole goal of this lab was to work on percentages and to figure out which traits were dominant and recessive in these plants and to practice using these pedigrees. So to summarize, stem color, we found out that purple was the dominant stem color, green is the recessive stem color. For leaf color, we found out that green was dominant and yellow was recessive. And remember, in order to figure out which was dominant, we ended up crossing two different colored plants together and looked at their offspring. And then we used Punnett squares and pedigrees to help confirm our results.